You're welcome back from that quick breather. It was actually indeed an interesting segment. They're having you sharing your opinions on the topic we had, which was on the honors. Now moving on to something else that, one way or another is affecting Nigeria and Nigerians as a whole is on the discussion segment where we're going to be looking at the crisis in the Middle East. Now we're wondering what's happening there. There are lots of reports, we've even seen stories, saying that the federal government has asked that Nigerian students be evacuated from there and they should be moved back to, the country, instructing them on what to do and where to go. So joining us now on that segment, we have our guest this morning, who is going to be joining us via phone.
All right, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, the former Minister of External Affairs, will be joining us to look at the escalating tensions in the Middle East, specifically the Israel-Iran crisis and its implication for global peace and stability. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you join us again this morning.
Thank you for inviting me to your platform.
And thank you very much for all you do for us, for your service to motherland. All right, this morning we are taking this conversation further, the escalating tension in the Middle East. We saw the launch of nearly 200 rockets from Iran to Israel in what they describe as a retaliation or defending its liberty following Israel's attack on Iran's embassy in Syria and the killing of the Hezbollah leadership. This morning, Prof, with the developments that we have seen and the comments or response of Benjamin Netanyahu, what would you describe this as? How would you describe this escalating tension? Are we gradually seeing what appears to be another world war?
Thank you for this question. I must say it takes courage on the part of your television station to tackle an issue that is 2,000 years old and that shows no sign of abating. I won't want to frighten your audience by talking about a third world war right at the beginning. Let us just do it a step at a time. I think we're on the verge of a regional war that has the potentiality of becoming a world war. Some people have argued that Iran fell into a trap set for it by Netanyahu. It has been Netanyahu's political dream all his life to have a war in the Middle East with Iran as a protagonist and Israel backed by the United States and Western Europe on the other side. And he's come very, very close to getting that. I don't subscribe to that point of view that Iran fell into a trap. I believe Iran has shown considerable patience in the provocation that it has faced in having the leader of, having that leader of Hamas killed on his territory. That was a violation of its sovereignty. Israel, from what we know now, had the capability to monitor the movement. It has spies planted within the network Hamas and the network Hezbollah. In fact, in the intelligence network all over the Middle East. Israel has that capability. And I will explain why in a minute. So, the point I'm making is that Israel could have killed that man elsewhere. But he chose to kill him while he was in Iran. Israel has blown up the consulate of Iran based in Syria.
Yes.
So, really, and yet all of this, Iran had shown a reluctance to engage frontally with Israel. But I think that Iran has come to the conclusion, and I think Iran is right in this, that whatever it does, after Israel has dealt with Hezbollah, Israel was going to come after Iran. I think it has come to that conclusion, that that is the strategy of Iran, of Israel, and that therefore this is the time when it also should show that it has the capability.
All right. Thank you very much for breaking this down for us, Doctor. Now let's talk about, let's bring this back home. Thank you for opening up, and giving us a backstory to all of this. Let's bring it back home now. So how do you foresee this middle crisis affecting, African nations in terms of security, migration, economic stability? How do you foresee this affecting African nations?
Well, it will that there are two. Excuse me.
Sorry about that.
There are two factors that we should be looking at. The first is the one dealing with nations like Nigeria that produces oil and that imports refined oil. The price of oil is going to go up. If we are not careful, there will be scarcity of oil if parties to this dispute decide to hit the naval passages through which oil tankers move. That will lead to a shortage of oil, and that will mean an increase in oil. And for those who import oil for their use, is going to have a devastating effect on their budget. So that's the first factor. The second factor is there are supporters of Iran, Hezbollah, Shiites on a religious basis all over Africa, and especially in Nigeria as well. Therefore, we need our own intelligence agencies and government security agencies need to be on the alert. We in Nigeria cannot afford to take sides, because just as you have supporters of Iran in Nigeria, you also have Sunnis who are opposed to Iran, who are also in Nigeria. You have Christians who, to me misguidedly, support Israel, because Israel is not a Christian country. Nevertheless, because in the Christian Bible, they talk about the God of Israel. They think that in supporting Israel, they are supporting Christianity. So you could see how there are different factors that will impact on Nigeria in what is going on right there now. So we do need to be careful our government itself must maintain what I will call constructive neutrality, which means in all the agencies in the world, beginning from the United Nations itself, we must be preaching peace, we must be preaching diplomacy, we must be preaching reconciliation, we must be preaching any de-escalation of the crisis.
All right.
That should be the policy of our government.
All right. Prof, talking about maintaining a neutral stance, where do you think we are likely to get that glimmer of hope that some kind of intervention would help to de-escalate this tension, especially given that in your previous intervention in this issue, you talked about the abuse of diplomacy by the United States. In fact, you described it as, is it duality or so?
No, duplicity.
Duplicity, correct. That's the word. You described the intervention as duplicity. On the one hand, showing absolute support for what Israel is doing, and also calling for ceasefire and restraints by the other party. Is there a glimmer of hope? What role does China or Russia, have in or even Saudi Arabia as far as this intervention is concerned to de-escalate the tension from that region?
Let me put it this way: for a scholar and for someone who, sometimes in the past have been involved in policy articulation and policy implementation, you don't necessarily adopt a policy profile being sure that it will work. You are doing your best because you are not the principal actor in this crisis. So when I urge that we should adopt constructive, peaceful, diplomatic posture, it is not in the belief that it will work. That's why, if you recall, my first statement on this your program was to say, I don't envy you tackling with an issue that is 2,000 years old, if not more than that. So, to solve it, I don't want to say it is an unsolvable problem. If a problem has lasted 2,000 years old, ask yourself, why has it not been solved within these 2,000 years old? It's because it is so intricate, so complex, that really it has defied the brains, the wisdom of some of the best thinkers in the world, whether you call them prophets or you call them diplomats or whatever you may call them. And this is then going to lead me to something I'm going to advocate, and I don't want to be misunderstood. There is a saying in Africa. Do you remember one song that Dino Melaye sang on the floor of the Senate 2 years ago or 3 years ago? That if your antagonist is stronger than you, getting engaged with that, antagonist is almost like asking to commit suicide. I don't want to sing it because I will turn off your listeners. Listen to a frog croaking. I'm not going to try to sing it. But you can imagine Muhammad Ali, may God bless his soul wherever he is, slapping me first. And then you decide to put me in the ring with Muhammad Ali. You know, I'm not even sure I will last one round with him before he will flatten me. The Palestinians have been fighting, have been involved in several wars with the Jews, and they've lost every war for a very good reason, that the United States is that when the Arabs decide to fight Israel, actually they are fighting Israel and the United States. So I think that the Palestinians have shown that they have courage. They have shown that they have, nobody can accuse them of cowardice. I think the time is ripe for all of us behind the scene, all those who mean well for the Palestinians, to call them behind the scenes and impose upon them, impress upon them the need to accept whatever it is they can accept without being wiped out. Just look at what has happened in Gaza. Just look at it. Who has come to the help of the people in Gaza? To tell you the truth, there are times tears come to my eyes when I see those children. They don't even know where their parents are. Their parents are probably lying under some buildings that have been blown up by Israel. Then there are parents looking for their children. Do you wish that if you were in that position? I just think that it's gone enough. Let us appeal to the Palestinians. Listen, I was a postgraduate student in the 1960s, and I've been on the side of the Palestinians since then. So I am not saying this because I am pro-Israel. No, I just don't want the Palestinians to be wiped off the face of the earth.
All right, Prof.
And don't say it cannot happen. True. Because there are nationalities that have been wiped off the face of the earth.
All right, Prof. As we wind down this interview and talking about seeking a lasting solution, what's your thought around the outcome of the November 5 election in the United States with regards to furthering the conversation in search of peace between the Trump presidency or Kamala Harris? Which one do you think will further advance the possibility for a ceasefire in the Middle East?
Tell you the truth, neither of them. Again, not because they won't, not because they may not try, but because it's an intractable problem. That then does not mean that you fold your hands and wait for. That doesn't mean that you fold your hands and do nothing. Yes, Trump will let you know where he stands. He's so pro-Israel. In fact, he's more Netanyahu than Netanyahu himself. Harris will continue with the duplicity of Biden, which means the same thing. She's going to be pro-Israel. She's going to be preaching to Israel. But behind the scene, they are going to be supplying Israel with the biggest weapons, the most destructive weapons that you have. Netanyahu is, and I'm so sorry, I'm no longer using a diplomatic term, but Netanyahu is an evil actor in this game. He wants war that will allow him to destroy Israel, Lebanon, Syria, to destroy Iran, and all the other countries that he feels are standing in the way of Israel. So really, the result of the November American elections is not going to make a fundamental difference, but it will give the if Harris wins, all right, she probably will show more respect for the United Nations. Biden has not shown any respect for the United Nations, I dare say. More vetoes have been cast by the United States on this matter than any time since I've been studying international relations. Having said that, let me round up by saying, not that I am pro-Harris, Kamala Harris, but I am a liberal-minded, a liberal-postured internationalist. And I would be more comfortable with Kamala Harris than with Trump.
Thank you very much, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, former Foreign Affairs Minister of Nigeria, for those invaluable and insightful contributions on our program this morning.
Thank you.
You have a great day ahead, sir.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, wonderful insights there from one of Nigeria's finest, one of Nigeria's, purest souls, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi there. We'll take a quick breather. When we return, we'll glance through a couple of newspapers before we round up this morning. Please don't go away.